Hi students, I hope you all are doing well. We have already finished off with two chapters. First is the biomolecules and the second is solution. Now we move on to the third chapter, that is ionic equilibria. Before starting with the chapter, we need to answer certain question. The first question is, what is chemical equilibrium? Now we have already studied this chapter in 11th standard. Okay, and we know that chemical equilibrium is the state in which both the reactants and the products, they are going to have the same concentration, or they are going to be in the same concentration, and there won't be any change in them with respect to time. So of course their properties are also not going to change. The second question that you need to answer is, what are electrolytes? And we know that electrolytes, they are substances when dissolved in water produces ions, and hence these solutions can conduct electricity as well. Now, what is this ionic equilibria? So, the equilibrium that exists between ions and unionized molecules in solution is called as ionic equilibrium. By now, you know what is the meaning of equilibrium. It means stable. Okay. Here you can say that the number of ions and unionized molecules on either side would be same. Only then the equilibrium is going to exist. In this chapter, Ionic Equilibria, we are specifically going to deal with acids and bases. The different definitions given by different chemists like Arrhenius, Lewis, Laurie Bronsted, they have given different definitions for acids and bases. Then we are going to study about the common ion effect, the Oswald dilution law, etc. in this chapter. Before moving on to the chapter, we need to know the types of electrolytes. Okay, so we know there are electrolytes and non-electrolytes. Okay, so electrolytes are those substances which give rise to ions when the substance is dissolved in water. For example, I gave you was sodium chloride, that is NaCl. You know, when you take NaCl, it is going to split up as Na plus and Cl minus, that is sodium chloride is splitting up into Na plus and Cl minus, which are its ions. Okay, and the solution of an electrolyte is going to conduct electricity. And when you look at non-electrolytes, these are the substance, even when you add in water, they are not going to ionize, or they are not going to split up into ions, and their solution is not even going to conduct electricity. Example I gave you was of sugar. When you dissolve sugar in water, I told you it is not going to split up as C plus, H plus and O minus. Okay, because the formula of glucose is C6H12O6. So here glucose is an example of non-electrolyte. Now there are two types of electrolytes, strong electrolyte and weak electrolyte. Let us study in detail what are these two types of electrolytes. So strong electrolytes are those electrolytes which will undergo ionization completely, and some of the examples of strong electrolyte are strong acids, strong bases and salts. Weak electrolytes are those electrolytes which do dissociate but to a smaller extent in the aqueous solution. Okay, they do not dissociate completely, and examples of weak electrolyte are weak acids and weak bases. We know that the equilibrium is established between ions and non-ionized molecules. Hence, ionization reactions are represented by a double arrow between ions and non-ionized molecules. Here, they have asked you to identify which is a strong electrolyte. So, we move with the first one, that is HF, hydrogen fluoride. Hydrogen fluoride is a weak acid and it is going to dissociate to a smaller extent. Hence, it is going to be a weak electrolyte. Then you have silver chloride, that is AgCl. AgCl is a strong base. It is going to dissociate as Ag plus and Cl minus, and hence it is a strong electrolyte. Next is copper sulfate. It is a salt. It will undergo complete dissociation as Cu plus SO4 2 minus. Hence it is a strong electrolyte. Next example is ammonium acetate. Now this is again a strong base, so it will dissociate as CH3COO minus plus NH4 plus. So this is also an example of strong electrolyte. The last example is H3PO4, which is phosphoric acid. It is a weak electrolyte, that is, it is not going to dissociate completely, only to some extent it is going to dissociate, that is H plus PO4 3 minus. So hence phosphoric acid is a weak electrolyte. So you can say that AgCl, CuSO4 and ammonium acetate are strong electrolytes, whereas hydrogen fluoride and phosphoric acids, being weak acids, they are weak electrolytes. Next, we need to study the degree of dissociation. As you can see, the degree of dissociation is represented by alpha. Now, what is the definition of degree of dissociation? Degree means you can say to what extent the dissociation is going to take place. Okay, now we shall move to the definition of degree of dissociation. So, the degree of dissociation of an electrolyte is defined as a fraction of total number of moles of the electrolyte that dissociates into its ions when the equilibrium is attained. Okay, so the electrolyte, to what extent it is going to dissociate when equilibrium is attained, is what gives you the degree of dissociation. You can also use the formula as alpha, that is degree of dissociation, is equal to number of moles dissociated upon total number of moles. Okay, so in the numerator you get the difference as in to what extent the electrolyte got dissociated, right? Now if you want to calculate the percent dissociation, then what you are going to take? You are going to take the formula for degree of dissociation, that is number of moles dissociated upon total number of moles, and multiply it by 100. We know for percent we take 100. Now if C is the molar concentration of an electrolyte, the equilibrium concentration of cation or anion is alpha into C mole dm cube. Now this you will understand when we study Oswald dilution law. Now we shall watch a small animated video which will give you an idea regarding acids, bases and salts.
If we are given lemon juice and soap water in two different beakers, will we be able to list the difference between the two? Perhaps the list will begin with the different colors, appearance and so on. But these are just properties that we can see. Are these the only differences? There are more. Lemon juice tastes very sour. Soap water tastes slightly bitter. Please don't try to taste it. Just trust me, it tastes slightly bitter. Is this a major difference between the two? Yes, taste is an important parameter as it takes us to the chemical properties. Why does lemon juice taste sour? And why does soap water taste bitter? Any idea? The answer lies in their nature. Lemon juice is an acid while soap is a base. Do you know what an acid is and what a base is? Let's get to know these terms first and later get into their details. To begin with, we have acids. The moment we hear the term acid, something scary or something that would burn the surfaces is what pops up in our mind. Well, that's kind of true, because acids are known to create a burning effect of whatever comes in contact with them. They can erode the surfaces or burn the skin when they come in contact with it. That's how acids are. The term acid comes from the Latin word acidus, which means sour. Yes, so are all acids sour to taste? Yes, they are. The intensity of sourness may vary in different acids, but the overall taste of acids is always sour. The best examples of substances that contain acids include citrus fruits like orange, lemon, lime and grapes. Now let's talk about the soap water. What nature does it have? It is basic in nature, which means soap is a base, or in other words, an alkali. What do we mean by this? For now, all we need to know is that the mild bitter tasting compound is called a base. Bases, when added to water, give foam and feel soapy when touched. Bases are exactly opposite to acids. The best examples of bases include baking soda, washing soda, quicklime, and many more. This was about acids and bases in general. Now can you tell me what will happen if an acid and an alkali, as in a base, come together? Will the solution explode? Will it give an unexpected reaction? Or something else? Well, it is something that we already know. Imagine we mix a strong acid like hydrochloric acid with a strong base like sodium hydroxide. What will be the result then? The reaction yields sodium chloride and water. Sodium chloride is the common salt used by us. So, an acid with a base gives us salt and water. This is a generalized reaction. Salts are the products of reaction between an acid and a base. But now tell me one thing. How do we understand whether a compound is acidic or basic? Can we taste it every time? If we are given a solution of concentrated sulfuric acid, how are we supposed to know its nature? It's not possible to bear even a drop of it on your skin. So tasting the solution is just out of the question. So now, how do we say that this is an acidic solution? There has to be a way to figure it out. The solution has to undergo a few tests. The substance used to check whether the compound is acidic or basic is called an indicator. The indicators indicate by changing their colors. Indicators, when added with acids or bases, show a change in color. That is how it becomes convenient for us to find out whether the compound is acidic or basic.
I hope by now you must have understood what are acids, bases and salts. Now we move on to the first theory for acids and bases, which is given by Arrhenius. How is acid defined according to Arrhenius? So he says that acid is a substance which contains hydrogen and it gives rise to H plus ions in aqueous solution. Okay, now I told you, even when we were studying prior, if there is H plus, then that means acid, and if there is OH, then it is a base, right? So it is rightly said here, acid is any substance which is going to contain hydrogen. For example, HCl, so it has hydrogen. Then you have H2SO4, sulfuric acid, it has hydrogen. Then whether it is acetic acid, CH3COOH, that also has hydrogen there. Okay, so it gives rise to H plus ions in aqueous solution. Two examples are given down here, so we'll just look out there. First example is that of hydrochloric acid, that is HCl. It is aqueous. You can see on the arrow water is mentioned, right? So it is going to split up as H plus plus Cl minus, right? So there H plus is released in the aqueous solution. Fine. Move on to the next example, that is acetic acid, CH3COOH. Okay, now in aqueous solution, how is that going to split up? CH3COO minus plus H plus. Okay, so how has Arrhenius described acids here? Acid is any substance which contains hydrogen and it gives rise to H plus ions in aqueous solution. In both the cases, you can see H plus ions given out in aqueous solution. Now, let's move on to the definition given for base by Arrhenius. So, base is a substance which contains OH group and it is going to produce hydroxide ions, that is OH minus ions in aqueous solution. Okay, so keep in mind, acid means H plus and base means OH minus. Okay, now two examples again are given here. One is of NaOH, that is sodium hydroxide, and the second one is ammonium hydroxide. The first one you will see NaOH is splitting as Na plus and OH minus. The second example, ammonium hydroxide, is splitting up as NH4 plus plus OH minus. Okay, so basically the substance should have OH groups, and after undergoing hydrolysis, that is in aqueous solution, when the splitting or dissociation takes place, it produces hydroxide ions, that is OH minus ions in the aqueous solution. But keep in mind this explanation that is given by Arrhenius for base is applicable only for those substances which contains OH groups. Like if you look at ammonia, that is NH3, and Na2CO3, that is sodium carbonate. Now these two examples are also examples of bases, but there are no OH group present in here. So the Arrhenius theory of base is not applicable for such substances where OH group is absent. So this is all about the Arrhenius theory for acids and base. I hope you understood what it is. And now we move on to the next theory given by Lowry and Bronsted for acids and bases. J. M. Bronsted and T. M. Lowry put forward the theory for acids and bases based on proton transfer. Proton transfer, proton means H plus. According to Bronsted-Lowry, the definition of acid is a substance that donates a proton, that is H plus, to another substance. And base is a substance that accepts that proton H plus which is given by the acid, or you can say from another substance. Let us now study an example for the same. Here HCl is the acid and ammonia, that is NH3, is the base. So according to the theory that Bronsted and Lowry gave, it says that acid donates the H plus ion. Okay, so here HCl is the acid, so it is going to donate the H plus from it to the base. And what is the base going to do? It is going to take the proton, that is H plus. It is going to accept the proton. So this H here will now go to NH3, hence NH3 will now become NH4 plus, and since S is donated there, Cl will be left with a negative sign. Now NH4 plus becomes an acid here because it has accepted the H plus, and because Cl has given the H plus, hence it becomes a base. Now here the base that is produced by donating the proton from its acid is called as the conjugate base of that acid. Fine. And likewise the acid which is produced when the base accepts a proton is called as conjugate acid of that base. Okay, you can see here. Now a pair wherein an acid and a base is differing by just a proton, that is H plus ion, is said to be a conjugate acid base pair. Now if you look down here, there is one more example where acid is HCl and base is water, that is H2O. So acid, that H plus proton will be donated to the base, so you will be left with H3O plus, and then since the H proton has got donated, only Cl minus will be left. Okay, so here you can see the acid 1 and base 1 is the one conjugate acid base pair, and the next acid 2 and base 2, those are the other conjugate acid base pair 2. So here in this reaction, Cl is the base produced from acid wherein acid has given the H plus proton. Hence the Cl is the conjugate base of acid, that is HCl. And here for the conjugate acid base pair 2, base has accepted the proton from HCl and hence it has become H3O plus, which is acting as an acid. So this is all about the Bronsted-Lowry theory of acids and base. Now we move on to the next theory of acids and bases. Next is the Lewis theory for acids and base. Now this is more generalized acid-base concept which was put forward by G.N. Lewis in the year 1923. Okay, now till now we studied three different theories, but you saw that the the definition of acid and base were related to the transfer of proton. Proton means H plus ion. Okay, now in this theory you will see the transfer of electron pair taking place. So now how has Lewis defined acids? So acid is any species that is going to accept a share in an electron pair. Okay, so if it is accepting a share in electron pair, means it is not having enough electrons in its orbit, you can say. Okay, that is why it is accepting an electron pair. Now what are Lewis bases? It is any species that donates a share in an electron pair. So if a base is donating an electron pair, means it can be stable even after donating an electron pair. So I told you, if you are poor, you will take some things when people give you. If you are rich, then even if you give say 10 or 15 or 100 rupees, that is not going to matter much to you because you have enough money. So similar is the case here. So now let us look at the examples that are given. Let us look at the first example. Here H plus is the acid and ammonia, that is NH3, is the base. You can see there is one electron pair with nitrogen. So what is happening there? H plus, which is an acid, is accepting a share of electron pair. Okay, and what is base doing? It is giving away, or it is donating that share of pair to the acid. Hence you can see a bond is formed between nitrogen and hydrogen, which gives the formation of ammonium, that is NH4. Now we move on to the second example, which is boron trifluoride, that is BF3, which is the acid, and again you have ammonia NH3, which is the base. Again you can see there is a lone pair of electron which nitrogen is having. So what is acid going to do? It is going to accept that pair of electron from the base, that is NH3, ammonia. Hence you can see there is a bond formed between boron and nitrogen, resulting into the formation of trifluoroamine boron. So these are the three theories that are put forward by different chemists regarding acids and bases. Next topic is amphoteric nature of water. The word amphoteric means dual nature. Okay, so water exhibits dual nature. Now in what terms do I mean this? So water has the ability to act as an acid as well as a base. So because water is acting as an acid as well as a base, water is said to have amphoteric nature. Now they have given one example here. The first example, water is reacting with ammonia, right? So here water is considered as acid and ammonia is the base. Okay, so because H2O is acid, of course it is going to have H plus, that is a proton, and it is going to donate the proton to the base. So if one H from H2O goes, then it is left with OH minus, right? And if NH3 is accepting that H, then it is going to become NH4 plus. So here H2O is acting as an acid and NH3 is acting as a base. In the second equation, you are taking H2O as base and you are using HCl as an acid. So here if HCl is acid, then it is going to donate the proton, that is H plus. So it will be left with what? Cl minus, and this H will move to H2O, giving you the formation of hydronium ion, that is H3O plus. Okay, so now just pay attention to the last statement written down there. H2O acts as an acid towards ammonia, and H2O, water, acts as a base towards HCl, and that is why, because it is acting as an acid and a base, it is said that water is having amphoteric nature.